Okay, my grade 11s, what I'm going to do with you today is just go through transport and plant growth and some adaptations, okay? So it's a little bit of a review. I did leave you with those videos because those are so much better illustrated than I can possibly illustrate and draw, but I do want to do a quick review with you on this, okay? So if we just have, I'm going to draw it out with you because that's what I asked you to do. Can you draw this stuff out? So if we draw this, and again, my version is going to be much more weak compared to the version that you saw drawn on the video. Okay, and I hope you had the patience to watch those videos because they were well done. So if we have xylem, quick review here. Okay, that's going to be our xylem. This is going to be our phloem. Okay, and in here are cells. So we'll call this xylem and phloem. Okay, so are you able to draw this out if you had to? How does water get up? So what does xylem do? It takes water up. So where's the water coming from? I'm going to bring you up a little bit further so you can see more. Okay, it's coming from the soil. So this is going to indicate water, and this is going to indicate minerals. Actually, I'll go with red for minerals. Okay, I promise I'm not going to try and keep you too long because I know you're itching for summer vacation. Okay, so these are minerals. So what the plant does is this, and the video very likely explained it. It brings in, and I know it did, it brings in minerals, okay, through active transport. So there's a greater concentration of minerals in a root, okay, than there is outside of the root in the soil. All right, and this is one reason why roots are healthy to eat. So in short, it brings this in because no living thing, as far as we know, knows how to actively transport water. So we don't have the ability, neither do plants, to transport water from an area of low concentration to an area of high concentration. Okay, nothing has that ability. So what we do instead, and what the plant does, is it brings in minerals and knows how to bring minerals in and use ATP to do that. And what happens then, this is why we started the animal systems unit with transport. Water will move in through osmosis to dilute this concentration. So that's how water gets into the root. Okay, it's diluting the concentration there. And then water is going to move up. Okay, so it moves up the plant. It moves up because of xylem. It moves up because of cohesion and adhesion. So water loves to climb tubes, and the fact that it loves to climb up tubes and adhere to them is called adhesion. And the fact that water forms bonds between other water molecules called hydrogen bonds, it's like they're carrying each other. And so there is adhesion to surfaces and cohesion between water molecules, and that helps pull everything up. Now, the truth is also, okay, so we're going to have a leaf out here, and this is where I really lose my artistic ability. This is the bark, okay? And out here I'm going to have one green leaf, okay? And because the leaf wants to get some sunlight, it wants to get some carbon dioxide, the stomata are going to be open, okay? So here's where all the lessons come together. You have to know what stomata are to understand why they're opening. And so carbon dioxide needs to go in there. Let's do carbon dioxide in pink. I don't think it's going to look much different, but that's our CO2, okay? And so the plant wants CO2 in here, all right, in the mesophyll, because it's going to convert CO2 into glucose or some kind of a sugar. And so every time the stomata is open, or the stoma is open, then we're going to get water leaving, okay? Water leaves through transpiration. It's evaporation of water. And because it happens so often, they gave it its own name. So when you see transpiration, it means evaporation of water from a leaf. And so what's happening is that as this water is traveling up, what it's doing essentially, it's going into the phloem too in some cases, but it's moving over to these leaves to replace the water that's been lost in the leaf because of that adhesion. So when this one leaves, it pulls that one, and it pulls this one, and it pulls this one, okay? And so that's a really super quick lesson on how water is moving up the xylem. Now, on the opposite end, sugar's building up in here, okay? And sugar's going to be actively transported. And that's going to be transported, as you know, to companion cells if they're there. And eventually the sugar, I'm just showing you the sugar in pink now. So I know it looks like a mineral, sorry. But this will be sugar, glucose, okay, quite large. And then sugar is going to build up in the phloem. And as it builds up, it is pushed down, okay? So that's called, when we look at the sugar, the movement of sugar, it's called the pressure flow hypothesis. And I will ask you about this. All right. So if you haven't, please watch those videos. So sugar moves through the pressure flow hypothesis, and water moves because of transpiration. Okay, it moves because of cohesion, and it moves because of adhesion. Okay, and all of that is a result of, and this is not part of that, but it's a result of the active transport of minerals. So because minerals are actively transported into the root, then we have osmosis of water. Okay, so then we get osmosis, and that moves water into the root. Okay, so osmosis moves water into the root because minerals are actively transported. This carries water up like hundreds of feet into the off the ground in tall trees. And then, so this is how water is transported, and sugar is transported that way. And remember, there's a lot of sugar here. So some of the water will come back down, diluting that sugar. And as you probably saw in the video, it gets recycled. All right. So to take up questions 1 to 3, what is the main driving force for the movement of water in plants? The main driving force, I'm going to say, is transpiration pull. Okay. So it's transpiration. It's pulling water up the tree. But you can't forget that there's also cohesion and adhesion involved. Why must active transport be used to move sugars and other solutes into the phloem? Because we need to get that sugar out of the leaf so we don't lose it, okay? So sugar is going from the source to the sink, all right? Now, that's something I really wanted to emphasize with you, but I know the video did. So there's going to be a pressure difference, all right? So this is the source for sugar. This is going to be the transport for sugar. And what is the sink for sugar? It's going to be the root, okay? And so unfortunately, I've drawn minerals and sugar in the same color, but we're going to make that sugar much bigger, okay? Because glucose is way bigger than a mineral. And so that's going to be our sink. All right, and then so sugars are actively transported from the source into the phloem, and then they're going to build up here, like that could get a little bit, lots of pressure there, and it forces the movement of the sugar down. All right, and then the next question says, describe the role of osmosis in the movement of solutes in phloem. So, okay, so here's where the osmosis comes into play. You've got minerals being actively transported, and then water will follow. So here's some osmosis happening here to dilute the concentration of, sorry, you guys can't see what I'm doing. To dilute the concentration of minerals, osmosis occurs in the root. Okay, we bring water in from the soil. And then osmosis is also going to occur here. So water will be moving from here to here, dilute that concentration of sugar. Okay, and when we get water in here, moving from the xylem to the phloem, that's osmosis also, because there's a higher concentration of water here than here, and that's another form of osmosis. And I think that's the end of those questions. So now I had you read about adaptations of plants, okay? So, and growth. So the first thing you read about was growth, and I'm just locating that just to reemphasize and review with you, okay? There are different types of growth. So if we get growth at the tip of the plant, so this shoot here, that is called apical growth. And you've got meristematic tissue. Remember, meristematic tissue is tissue linked to growth. So when the plant grows taller at the apex, so think about the apex of a mountain, that's called apical growth. All right. So we've got growth that's going to be going in the vertical direction. At the tips of these shoots also, you can have more meristematic tissue, and that is like lateral. So when the plant grows sideways, that's lateral growth. When the plant grows up, that's vertical growth. So when the plant grows from its apical meristems, it's going to grow taller. When the plant grows from its lateral meristems, it's going to grow wider. So if you want a plant to be short and wide and really full, then you would cut the top of the plant off. Okay, that encourages growth over here. If you want your tree to grow nice and tall and not really block a window, for instance, then you trim the tree on the sides, and that encourages growth on the top. Okay, and then we've got secondary versus primary growth. So primary growth is a plant growth originating from the apical meristems throughout the life of the plant, and secondary growth is the growth that occurs from lateral meristems. So primary growth, lateral growth. All right, that's something I wanted you to know the difference between. And then looking through here, normally I would go through this in a lot of detail. You're not going to get a lot of information on this semester. Do know this, okay? Growth occurs from the root down. So the root grows into the ground. So this is the direction of growth for the root. So this is where we're getting growth. Okay, this is where we're getting maturity in the root. So this is where the function of the root is really going to be happening, and this is where the root is going to continue growing to anchor the plant down. Okay, other than that, I think we're good for that unit or for that chapter. So then we go into, in your own words, write definitions for the following. So we've already gone through this. Differentiation means when the plant goes from being like basically a stem cell to being a specialized cell. So what's an example of a specialized cell? It would be like a xylem cell, okay? A xylem or a phloem, those type of cells, parenchyma, those are specialized. Primary versus secondary went through, and we've already done that. So question 4, compare and contrast primary and secondary growth in woody stems. So same thing, okay, primary growth is going to be going up, secondary growth is going to make the plant wider. So because we're looking at stems, we're saying up. If we're looking at roots, we'd say primary growth grows down. And then I asked you to list a lot of different adaptations in the video. So you do need to know that plants are adapted to live in water, they are adapted to live on land, and they are adapted to live in very dry conditions. So I've already shown you my air plant. Okay, when we look at a plant that is adapted to live in a very dry condition, okay, we can see a few different strategies here. So strategy number 1, get these thorns, okay? Notice the leaf is green, obviously, but it's got all kinds of little prickly spines on this. This is actually really hard to, if you touch this, like I can't even transplant it because it's so prickly. And what the plant does is it stores all kinds of water in this flesh. So if we were to cut one of these leaves, it would have lots of water. So animals would love to be able to eat this, right? In terms of evolution, they would love to be able to eat this. And some have actually evolved mechanisms by which these spines don't bother them. So they've out-evolved the cactus. But mostly the cactus is winning this battle because most animals don't want to get these spines in their mouth, okay? And inside, like I said, there's lots of flesh. And if you're living in a desert, you're an animal desperate for water. So you would love to get inside of this guy. That's one obvious adaptation. Here's a plant, okay, that doesn't want to be overwatered, okay? So here's one that doesn't want to be overwatered. And so if I had you at school, we'd put a drop of water on here and we'd see that the water would actually roll off. And these little apexes here, these little peaks, are called drip tips. And so the water actually forms like a little bead and it'll roll right off of this. Because this plant here gets enough water, it doesn't need extra water. Okay, so just 2 practical adaptations. You've probably seen succulents, they're really big right now. Okay, so succulents, very important, right? Like really, people really like to plant these right now and bring them in their homes. The succulent is similar to the cactus in the fact that it's very, very fleshy. So this is adapted to an environment that's very dry. Okay, I don't have any water plants for you, unfortunately, but water plants will have their stomata on top so that they can bring in extra air because they're at risk for drowning. Okay, and actually. Bringing extra air in helps them to float as well. And so hopefully you saw that in the video. All right. So those are some adaptations that I wanted you to know about. And lastly, I just want to tell you very briefly about different types of growth in terms of plants. So these guys are called tropisms. So tropisms allow plants to grow in different directions as a result of the environment. So phototropism is when a plant grows toward the sun. So leaves show positive phototropisms and roots show a negative tropism. So a root wants to grow away from the sun because then it anchors itself in the soil. So if you show a root sun, it'll grow away from it, all right? And how does all that stuff happen? It happens because of these hormones that you'll read about. and watch a video about. Gravitropism is a response to gravity. So roots show a positive gravitropism. They grow towards gravity. Stems grow away from gravity. So they show a negative gravitropism. And thigmotropism means that plants can, like a vine, for instance, ivy will attach to something. And so if they touch something, they grow along it. So they shoot these tendrils out and they grow along that tree and they anchor themselves to that tree. So thigmotropism is a response to touch, okay, contact. I'm just going to briefly go over some of these hormones with you. Auxins collect on the shady side, okay? So I know that was mentioned in the video. Auxins encourage plant growth. So if auxin encourages plant growth and it grows, I'm just going to draw a sun in here, okay? So I'm on page 615. I probably should have told you that earlier. Okay, so if that's the sun, and if the auxin collected on that side, then this side would grow more quickly and the plant would grow away from the sun. So what the plant has evolved is a mechanism to put its hormone, auxin, on the shady side of the leaf, okay, if that's the sun, or the shady side of the stem. And so because it has plant growth hormone there, that side's going to grow faster than this side, and the plant is going to turn toward the sun, okay? So when you look at this plant that I haven't turned in a while, you can see, sorry guys, you can see that it's going in one direction, okay? So this plant has been growing in this direction. So the auxin is over here on this side of the plant, all right? So that's auxin. What else do we have here? Gibberellins you can read about, cytokinins you can read about, ethylene gas, interesting. This is where you get one ripe banana and it ripens everything else. So your fruit that's ripened gives off ethylene gas, and it causes ripening of fruit, okay? And that's where I'm going to leave you, because I think I've gone over almost everything I'd like to go over, or I have gone over everything I'd like to go over. I've asked you to name the 5 plant regulators. I asked you to do that, so you can do question 1 on page 618. You can do it from the textbook, or you can use the video that I gave you. All right, be aware of what those 5 different growth regulators do for the plant, and that would be this list here, okay? So you've got them all on pages 615, starting with auxins, to 617 with aspartic acid. Sorry, I can't say that, aspartic acid, okay? I hope you've enjoyed the plant unit to some extent. I know it's dry for grade 11s, but just understand that without plants, we wouldn't be alive. Because if plants died tomorrow, we'd be out of oxygen very quickly, okay? And they're very cool because they have all these really cool adaptations that unfortunately you weren't able to see. But I did post the Venus flytrap, okay? And that's another adaptation of a plant. When a plant is in very poor soil, it actually adapted a means to get more minerals, and minerals are found in meat. And so the plant developed a sticky substance to trap meat, and that would be the insects, and so it gets its minerals, okay? And why are the minerals important? Because of transport. You need to get that water in the plant so it can photosynthesize, all right? And make its own sugar. So I hope that you've enjoyed the unit. I hope that you do well on your quiz, and I hope that you have enjoyed your year, and I wish you a very good summer, okay? So take care, stay safe. Remember, social distancing is still important in the summer. And hopefully we see each other again in the fall. Bye-bye.